Hey everybody, welcome back to Swedenborgian Life Live. Today we're looking at the seventh seal, Wormwood, the star of our show today, and 7 angel trumpets, or at least we're going to begin the saga into these 7 angel trumpets. So yes, you are in the right place, because I know those questions were on your heart, and so we're going to dig into them today. My name is Curtis Childs, and I'll be your host. And as you can see, I'm not on a webcam anymore. I'm on a real camera, and I've got these like robot things in my ears. And these robot things, I'm very glad to have them, because in my ears now is Dr. Jonathan Rose. How you doing, man?
Hey, Curtis.
Great to have you here. As always, part of the show, bringing your knowledge, enthusiasm, your wisdom, and great to have all of you here. Like and subscribe if you want to help this channel grow and become strong and what all it was meant to be. And so part of our commitment back, because we do get so much from you, our audience, is that we like to answer your questions. You know, we try to do it when you write in a question on any of our YouTube videos. We have a whole group of people that goes in and makes sure we get you an answer. And sometimes we like to really answer your questions. And that's what this show does, is we take things that have been on your mind and expand it and give you a whole hour of content on it. So this show, you might say, why are we talking about 7th seal, Wormwood, 7 angel trumpets? Well, we had a question from a viewer under our episode, Will the Devil Be Released After 1,000 Years? Which is its own odyssey, right? Didn't we do that show like 995 years ago? We got to check the date on that. So the question under that was, what's the meaning of wormwood? This was from Biomed EE. And, okay, just between Jonathan, we won't keep this in the actual video, but between you and me, I'm just kidding, we will keep it. I don't even think I knew there was somebody named Wormwood in the Book of Revelation, but there is, and wormwood is actually the name of a burning star falling from heaven. Right? So not just anyone, but a burning star. You're going to name this, I guess it's kind of like Halley's Comet, right? Wormwood, the burning star. And this comes out of Revelation 8, verses 10 through 11. So we want to look at the meaning of that burning falling star. And to do that, you've really got to have the context for it. So for this show, we're going to do an extended look into the meaning of this mysterious, frightening, fascinating chapter of Revelation, Revelation chapter 8. Jonathan, are you buckled up and ready?
I'm ready, and one thought that occurred to me to say is just that in a number of apocalyptic kind of shows, books, and so on, Wormwood is a name that comes up, the Screwtape Letters and others, where it's sort of a devil name that you often come across. So what's up with this Wormwood?
Yeah, so if you named your devil in your story after Wormwood, here's what you named it after. All right, let's take a look at what Revelation 8 has in store for us. The premise you've got to accept is that Revelation, the book of Revelation as a whole, is symbolically predicting the last judgment. And according to Swedenborg, the last judgment was something that actually was going to take place in the spiritual world and happened during Swedenborg's writing tenure. It happened in the year 1757.
That's right. It's like he was called to be a witness to it and to be in both worlds, sort of checking out what was going on. And he says that that was mainly a judgment on what had been transpiring in the name of Christianity. Like, how was Christianity doing over those 1750 odd years since Jesus was alive and walked the earth? What had happened during that time?
Right. So it was concerning religious things, particularly, the state of the Christian church on earth. And there's a lot of reasons behind why it was focused on that church. For an overview of what Swedenborg saw for that whole episode, see our episode we did called The Last Judgment. And but that episode is not the only place where it's covered. Swedenborg wrote quite a lot about the Last Judgment, right?
He sure did. He wrote 2 lengthy works expounding it. And particularly his published work, Apocalypse Revealed, in the New Century Edition, it'll be called Revelation Unveiled, tells what the symbolism in the book of Revelation is all about. And if I can just summarize briefly, part of the action that goes on after some letters at the beginning is that there's this scroll or book that's sealed with 7 seals, and no one could open it. And when the Lamb comes, he starts to open the 7 seals, and as he does so, one by one, these events happen. So that's sort of the backstory to what we're talking about today.
Yeah. And this opening of these seals is kind of the book of life, right? Is this revealing of the true nature, and really a lot of what the Last Judgment is, if not the entirety of the Last Judgment, is revealing the true nature of people's hearts. So we're getting to what was hidden is now known. It's okay, we've been operating under these false kind of premises. What's at the root of all this? And a judgment, as Swedenborg describes it, is just a sorting. Like if you think of a centrifuge, it's kind of a judgment on the plasma or whatever you got in there. The heavy stuff sinks, the lighter stuff rises. So if the Last Judgment is this kind of giant shaking up and sorting of the state of all this, of the human race in the afterlife and in this life, in preparation for everything to be sorted out and restored to order, you had to first uncover what people were really like. And if you want to, so we had all those seals, right? And we went over actually the first 6 seals in 3 episodes. We did one about the 4 horsemen. It's all the classic, all the greatest hits. The 4 horsemen, the souls under the altar, which was really moving, and who are the 144,000 in Revelation. So then we've covered most of the seals, right? So we must be almost done, but there's a catch.
There is a catch, and I just want to respond to your centrifuge image, because what I like about that fits the situation very well as Swedenborg describes it. He doesn't use that specific analogy, but in a centrifuge, the centrifuge is not saying, oh, you're a bad particle, go to the bottom. Oh, you're a good particle, rise to the top. It's just the heaviness, it's the nature of each particle. This one's large, that one's small. That's what, places it. And the only way you can do a centrifuge, you don't do it gently. It's a very intense process to try to whip these things around so that they sort out. So, right. Revelation chapter 8, which is what we're talking about.
Wait a second. I have a question. Were there centrifuges in Swedenborg's time? I mean, it doesn't seem like it'd be that hard to make one if you just got like I'm picturing like a spinning wheel, where somebody's kicking their foot up and down. Could you get something going fast enough?
He says a lot about particle size in the human body and, the globules and various things. I wonder, that's an interesting question. They certainly had things you could spin, with your feet or with, fire or water, steam, not steam engines yet, but so I bet that was something that was already starting to be explored. Okay, well,
that's actually, we're going to have to stop our show here and pursue that line of inquiry for the rest of the hour. No, I'm kidding.
We'll be back with you in an hour or two. So Revelation chapter 8 is about the opening. The whole story's been building up to this point of the opening of the 7th seal. Now you're going to be done, right? You open the 7th seal. But in typical biblical fashion, that ending of that set of 7 only starts another set of 7, which is that these angels are given trumpets. There's 7 angels and they have trumpets, and they're going to sound, and events are going to occur. And chapter 8 just covers the first 4, which is what we'll be covering today, the first 4 of those trumpets and what goes on surrounding that.
Yeah, so it's like, can we go home now? Yeah, he's just got one more to do. Oh no, there's 7 more inside this. And isn't that like,
no, that's right.
Swedenborg describes a universe, and you can see in ours where there's, it's like the holographic nature, or the microcosm and the macrocosm, that within each thing is an image of the whole. So within that last seal is, 7 more things, steps, right?
That's right.
And opening that 7th seal, 7 being a very significant number symbolically, was the Lord. I mean, that symbolized the Lord revealing the true nature of people, and specifically people who claim to have Christian faith, the following of Christ. But it was what Swedenborg called his arch nemesis in a lot of ways, faith alone, which was a body of ideas separated from love or from charity. So what we're going to do for you all right now is we're going to read through 13 verses in Revelation 8 and give the basic symbolism according to Swedenborg.
That's right. And in this literal meaning, it's classic Book of Revelation stuff, because it seems like God and the angels are throwing punishments down on the poor, unlucky souls who live below. They're crashing down onto the earth, and it just seems very alienating as a picture of God and angels. What does that have to do with love?
And how are you going to have that be? This is, I'm an angel, and my job is to go throw the plagues onto the earth. Just fundamentally changes what you believe an angel is.
Wednesdays, I like to change the rivers to blood. Thursday, we go for frogs. Right.
Yeah, well, it's like I don't know if I want to be an angel anymore. That's right. So what's it mean?
As is so often the case, the inner meaning is actually the opposite of what it looks like on the surface, which is what comes down from God in heaven, of course, is love. It's love and truth and light. That's what comes down. What you see when rivers turn to blood, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, grass burns up and all that drama, is how people are reacting to the presence of love. They have it's hard to imagine, but they have a negative reaction to that love coming down.
Well, I think the drama in it is really the drama is coming out of the depravity of the condition that we've gotten ourselves into, that the way that people were living then, and we're still struggling with it as the human race now, is so opposed to the principles of selfless love that you're seeing all this intense imagery, which is just how far off track we've gotten, and how what should be loving and the thing you'd want to accept more than anything is violently resisted.
Yeah, the analogy that comes to mind is that sometimes, I don't know, I've got a cast iron pan that I use for cooking sometimes, and you get that thing hot, you've got some oil in there. If you just took a little bit of water, one of the ways that people find out whether the pan is hot enough is you just put a little bit of water in. If the pan's hot enough, that water will instantly sizzle, and you get this angry sound out of the pan, Well, the water, is it the water's fault? The water is just pointing out the pan is hot now. And so some of what's coming down from God sort of has that effect of saying, hey, you're pretty overheated right now in this situation.
Right.
So
all right, well, let's start our story.
Yeah, let's walk through. I agree. Let's pick up in that first verse of Revelation chapter 8. When he, meaning the Lamb, opened the seventh seal, what do you think is going to happen? What's the first thing that happens?
Explosion.
There was silence in heaven for about half an hour. Wow, it's quite an image, the whole of the heavens being just like silent for half an hour.
Yeah, to get you to really feel the correspondence, we're going to do a quick 30 minutes of silence right now.
Except for my laughing.
It just shows that it's a little anticlimactic and also strange that you can just, why this huge pause right in the middle of it? Well, this is where we start to hunger for, like, what's the meaning of that? What are they silent about? What's that all about? So I'm going to be sort of adding color commentary or play-by-play, whichever way you want to see it, on these Bible verses that you're reading, because Swedenborg does walk through them and give us some insight into it. This is Apocalypse Revealed 389. This symbolically means that angels from the Lord's spiritual kingdom were quite dumbfounded. What was it? That the seal was opened? What's it about? When they saw people who claimed to have faith to be in the state they were. So they were saying, look, here you have this group of people who says, we have the teachings of God here, and we are God's church, and yet there's the state, meaning the kind of people the state of life they were in, which was not loving, which was not following what Jesus was trying to teach. It was just shocking to heaven. The silence in heaven means nothing else than an astonishment there over people who claim to have faith, like, I'm in the club, and yet are in such a state. For their state is described in the following verses, and their character can be seen from the explanations given.
Yeah, so silence is hard to read, but in this case, Swedenborg explains that silence was like they were just dumbfounded. And it's just amazing to think about that. That was the reaction of heaven. They didn't know up until that point quite what was going on. And so
Right.
now to get to verse 2, and one little pointer here is that a trumpet corresponds to truth being revealed. This is an examination. It's kind of flushing out how people are. So in verse 2, and I saw the 7 angels who stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets.
Okay. They have trumpets. Let's see if we can again unpack that a little bit. This is AR 390 to 391. This symbolizes the entire spiritual heaven in the Lord's presence, hearing and doing whatever he commanded. So at first we're getting, I guess, in the contrast, the nature of what the state of heaven is like, and how it interacts with the Lord. And then we'll be seeing what the opposite state is and how it reacts with the Lord. And an examination and exposure of the state of the church and consequent life of people caught up in faith alone. So I like that examination of, so you're saying you have this religiosity that's putting you in the right category, but what are you actually like? How's your actual life?
And as is so often the case in these things, it unfolds by stages. And each one of these trumpets, which we'll hear 4 of in this chapter, tells you something about what was going on. So in verse 3, then another angel came and stood at the altar having a golden censer. A censer is an incense burner. And he was given much incense that he should offer it for the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. Now this golden altar reminds me of the altar of incense that was just outside the veil in the tabernacle. So interesting kind of imagery there. What's going on there?
Well, and that's interesting. I mean, that's I guess why they would make things like that in the world. If you think about the representative stuff like the veil and the altar, is because those things have the same representation in the spiritual world, because those are like a censer is like a word, a spiritual word. It's conveying something. And this is Swedenborg's take on it. He says the altar at which the angel stood and the golden censer that he had in his hand symbolized worship of the Lord springing from a spiritual love. So what is that? Worship springing from a spiritual love, which is worship that originates from the goodness of charity expressed through the truths of faith. So there you have
this.
Yeah.
Right. This worship begins from love. That's like where it's coming from.
And you look at the way it's put there. The charity or love is expressed through truths of faith. So rather it being, you've got this doctrinal framework, and that is the defining characteristic of your church. It should be that there's this love, that the doctrinal ideas are a framework for the expression of that love, but it's clearly the love that's leading things. And he was given much incense that he should offer it for the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. This symbolizes an appeasement, lest angels of the Lord's spiritual kingdom be harmed by the spirits of the satanic kingdom situated below, which is getting kind of intense. And it, I think, shows, that there's this whole, if you haven't heard of it before, there's this whole consciousness and balance in the spiritual world between what is positive and what is negative. So if you're going to move huge things around, everything's got to be set in its proper place. Just like here, if you're going to say, oh, we're going to, shut down the supply chain of this, there's all this stuff you got to prepare and do around it, because there's all these complex relationships. So it is with this.
And it's quite the opposite of that idea of God sort of like Zeus throwing thunderbolts down on the human race. There's actually this sort of, oh, this is going to be intense for you, so here, let me give you a blanket, or get you something to sort of cushion this. This incense is like an image of a protection that's needed.
Well, and so to like dig into the statement I was just making, like speaking of a shutdown, there's people working on the water pipes that are bringing like water to all the houses around here, and in order for them to hook up the houses to the new water, they had to shut the water off for a little while, right? So you have to, and there's like a preparation for that. There has to do with the pressures, and there's just the right moment when they've got the other stuff hooked up. So it's all got to be done in this order, or else you're going to get all kinds of problems with it. But when it's done in the right order, everything is protected. We lost water for like 15 minutes, and then suddenly we're hooked into this new
Boom,
system.
it's back on.
Right.
Yeah,
So if it's
this
like,
is what I love about the book of Revelation is that there's an order to it. It's not it's not as random as it seems. There's a sequence.
Right.
And of course, you have to do that protection first. And in verse 4, you hear this continued. And the smoke of the incense for the prayers of the saints ascended before God from the angel's hand. And Apocalypse Revealed 394 says this symbolizes protection by the Lord. So these angels are protected because this is going to get intense here. And so here you go. Here's something to buffer that. And then in verse 5, then the angel took the censer, and what did he fill it with? He filled it with fire from the altar and threw it to the earth. Now that sounds a little violent. And there were voices, thunderings, lightnings, and an earthquake. So it was fire from the altar that was put in this incense burner, and then that was thrown to the earth. What does that mean? And there were voices, thunderings, lightnings, and an earthquake.
And this is where we first get into the real appearance of angels causing destruction. So we should spend a little time on this. There's actually a great quote here from Swedenborg about that dynamic and what this verse means. So a censer, just like incense, symbolizes worship springing from a spiritual love. Because in the word, a container has the same symbolism as what it contains, which is interesting because I guess that goes along with use, and the reason for something's being is the function it provides. So the reason for the container is what it contains. So they're essentially part and parcel of the same effort. Fire from the altar of burnt offering symbolizes divinely given celestial love. Oh, that doesn't sound so bad, because that altar symbolizes worship springing from that love. So far we got nothing but friendly stuff, right? Throwing the censer to the earth symbolizes an inflow into lower regions.
Okay, and this seems to me a core point in what we're talking about, which is that this is just about love. The agent of this kind of examination and judgment is just love and truth coming down into these lower regions. And so it's not that an angel arbitrarily took this incense burner and sort of wanted to rain fire on the earth or something, out of having a fit. This is love coming down into lower regions, because love is going to reveal what is truly in people's hearts and minds. People can sort of cloak themselves with various different kind of disguises and so how do you find out what's really going on? Love and truth can cut through all that and reveal what's going on. And so it's a much gentler, it's still going to be intense, like the water hitting the frying pan, but it's the source of it is nothing but love.
Yeah, and that, if I'm just going to continue to harp on my water hookup example, but we just want to get the point driven home here, that what's coming at all the stuff that leads to this drama in the story is starting with something that's good coming from heaven. It has to do with the state of the nature of the receptors. So with the water main, having running water is just this awesome thing that gives us life, right, in our houses. And so getting hooked up to that is great. But if in my house, and normally you have all these pipes that put it right where it's supposed to be, so everything's good. But if in my house the pipes are in disrepair and there's places where they don't line up, and there's going to be all kinds of leaks and things, that hooking in of that life-giving water at the right pressure and everything it's supposed to have can be disastrous for my basement, right? So it really is about, the thing is good, but if you've destroyed the receptors, what is good and life-giving becomes dramatic and seemingly destructive.
And even that is helpfully pointing out, you have a leak here. Here's where your bad pipe is, right? But it's a disaster for you. Absolutely, yeah.
But because you're not gonna, the state you're trying to get to is having running water, and you're never gonna get running water any other way than seeing those leaks and fixing those leaks.
Yeah, that's right.
And okay, we'll continue with the quote. And there were voices, thunderings, lightnings, and an earthquake. This
what are those?
Yeah, all right, right. This symbolically means that after a communication with them was opened, the angels heard reasonings about faith alone and arguments in support of it. And they perceived the state of the church among those below as headed for destruction. So this is all that atmospheric turbulence is the mental turbulence in the church at the time that is reacting negatively to heaven saying, here's some love. And they're saying, well, here's the intellectual framework we've gotten together that makes it so we don't have to really participate in love, that we can really justify our own self-interest rather than that. So that's
I love it.
The storm.
I love it. The response to this inflow of greater love and truth is that they call a meeting of the debate society and they list all the reasons why it can't be this way. I mean, it's really the same reaction. Jesus was the embodiment of love, the same reaction he got in the New Testament, which is that, okay, now we need to debate this. Was this the right thing to do? Was it the right time to do it? We disagree because it went against our tradition. We say that you don't get saved by doing good things. So what are you talking about, love and all that? So this is what all the lightning and thundering and voices is, all this mayhem that it kicks up in people. It's just amazing to me.
That's so cool to draw that connection with Jesus, because it does seem to be that dynamic there is with Jesus. There is a lot of teaching and healing going on, and this clash with this hard-headed religious fundamentalism that is actually doesn't like the idea of the love becoming primary. It's the same sort of thing here.
Yeah, wants to control him, wants to control when people get healed, wants to ask what authority he's doing these things by, why are you allowed to stand up and teach, and territory issues and all that stuff,
Right. So it says, lightnings, thunderings, and voices symbolizes states of enlightenment, perception, and instruction following an inflow from heaven. Here, however, in reference to people caught up in faith alone, the voices, thunderings, and lightnings symbolize reasonings about faith alone and arguments and proofs in support of it. So there's instead of being willing to be taught, it's saying no. That goes against my central tenet, which is I want what I want. Earthquakes symbolize changes in the state of the church. Here, the state of the church among those below was perceived as heading for destruction. And the church can occur in a single person, the earth, what do you stand on emotionally and mentally? For earthquakes occur in the world of spirits, literally, when the state of the church and its societies is corrupted and turned upside down. The angel threw the censer to the earth before the 7 angels began to sound with their trumpets, in order that the inflow might open a communication between the angels in the spiritual heaven and the spirits below who are caught up in faith alone. It was owing to that communication that reasonings about that faith arose, and proofs in support of it, and these were also audible and perceptible. This is why we say that after the communication was open, the angels heard and perceived them. And what's remarkable... The angels...
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. And I understand. Listen, it's going to be very tough for us to not cut each other off, but we're doing okay. We're doing our best. And listen, let's just always make the rule that I'll just always talk.
Good. Simple.
No, I was just going to say, it just strikes me how you might think of something like faith alone, which you don't really ever give any thought to, but it's really it's really gumming up the work spiritually enough that there has to be a lot done just for heaven it's a real impediment for heaven coming to the earth. Yeah,
it's a real situation that they have to deal with, and again, I love the sense that the angels know the order of the thing, so that casting of the censer to the earth was, again, okay, we need to move forward with this. It's time now. People have been protected. Let's go forward with it.
Right.
There's an order to it. And then in verse 6, the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. And Swedenborg says in Apocalypse Revealed, this symbolizes their being prepared and ready to examine the state of the church and consequent life in people for whom religion is faith alone. And maybe it's worth just sketching one more time what he means by faith alone. There was a big teaching back then, as there still is today in Christianity, widespread theory that what you're saved by is your faith alone. it's not dependent on your good works. Your good works are important, you should do them, but they contribute absolutely nothing to your salvation. The only thing that saves you is your faith. Just have faith, just believe, which actually takes off the table all these loving acts of compassion in a way. You know what I mean? Like saying that salvation has nothing to do with that. And so that's kind of a little thumbnail of what's going on with faith alone, if I have that right.
Right. I got to let my dog out. I'll be right back.
I think your dog agreed.
Yeah, right. Yep. Well, I can't sit here and say, love, 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 and then not do what my dog needs done, right? That's faith alone.
That would be hypocritical.
Okay, we're set. Everything is as it should be. So let's move on to the next verses, right? And I want to say that in these following verses, you're going to hear trumpets sounding, and everything that happens after a trumpet sounds is a symbol about some consequence of having self-serving motivations that attach to the doctrine of faith alone and use it as a tool. And this is getting into why faith alone is actually a problem, because there's never actually a passionate from deep in the heart that says, I want to live by faith alone. Faith alone is very easily used by our own self-centered ambition and desire to be more powerful than other people. And so it's really that desire, our negative urges saying, well, I can use this to get what I want. And you can even think of, even beyond religious stuff, just whenever we are using a framework or bending the rules to get what we want rather than using those to do what's right and good and true and just for everyone, that stuff is so prone to being abused if it's not starting in love. So let's see what happens next in Revelation.
In the 7th verse, the first angel sounded, so this is the first of 4, and what happens? Hail, that's usually what happens in the book of Revelation. Hail and fire followed, mingled with blood. Okay, now we're getting into it. And they were cast down to the earth, and 1/3 of the trees were burned up, and all green grass was burned up.
It's just improper behavior by that angel. Because,
right,
okay, hailing that stuff on the earth, but you're going to destroy the rainforest and all the lungs of the planet, burn up the grass. Like, how is that helping anything?
The angel knows that stuff is flammable.
Right? What do you think is going to happen if you add more blood to the mix, so at least it puts out the fire? So What is it? It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. What does it mean? So here is a quick breakdown of the correspondences. So hail and fire mingled with blood is false ideas springing from hellish motivations, destroying the messages in the word about goodness and truth. Because even in the Bible, even in Revelation, there is a lot in there saying, look, love is first. You mentioned the stories of Jesus. That message is all over it. But when you get this, evil loves in control, and they're wielding around this idea of all that matters is the ideas. The ideas can lead us toward love or away from love, but it's the ideas, it's the doctrine that matters. Then that actually is used to develop a framework that says, don't really pay attention to the love part in there and just check whatever boxes. Let's build this system to get us what we want.
And religion is a powerful thing, so why wouldn't it want to co-opt religion? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Well, that'll only help. Like if we want to dominate people or whatever, religion's a great way to do it.
Totally. It goes right to people's core. So being cast down to the earth means it's affecting people's religious state of mind. 1/3. Yeah, why 1/3? Like, how did you stop it that cleanly that it only burned 1/3? Did you cut a really big fire line across all the forests of the world? How'd you measure that? Everything having to do with truth. So it's not everything, but it's destroying all the truth. The trees being burned are people consumed by evil motivations, and the grass being burned is elements of faith destroyed by evil. So it's not that it's the angel destroying. And this is the correspondence flip, which is so potent. It's not the angel is destroying. The angel is revealing how your evil motivations have destroyed you, even if you don't realize it. They have destroyed your humanity. And the evil has destroyed the ability of this faith construct to actually lead us to lives of good.
And this imagery just does kind of viscerally get across how terrible that is. Like, how would you know? You hear it on paper, you think, oh, I don't know, it doesn't sound too bad. But to the angels, this is like a third of the trees are gone and all the grass is burned up. It's an environmental catastrophe.
Yeah, right.
That's the equivalent. In the next two verses, verses 8 and 9, then the second angel sounded. And I don't know, I like this one for some reason. Something like a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood, always with the thirds here, and a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. So weird.
I can see why you like that one. It's a nice, pleasant
imagery,
one.
This great burning mountain of fire cast into the sea, and again, the imagery of blood is terrifying. But what's going on here?
And again, it seems like there's some victims here that shouldn't have been victims. How much were the creatures living in the sea contributing to improper understanding of the doctrine?
Bad fish.
Yeah, and it's obviously symbolic, because if you say a third of the creatures in the sea died, and then a third of the ships were destroyed, it's just there's something going on there. This is telling us a parable about something. And so Swedenborg says that the great mountain burning with fire is this hellish, self-centered desire and motivation. That is like the beating heart of this desire to dominate others. Being cast into the sea is affecting external religious practices. So if you look at that changing the way that organized religion functions, if it's got this mountain burning with fire, that ruins this stuff. A lot of stuff that can be cool. Rituals and prayers and gatherings gets destroyed by this mountain.
It really gives me an image right now of how else would you describe how self-centeredness is adversely affecting religion than to say, what would it be like if a great mountain burning with fire? The surface of the sea would be roiled up. The temperature would change. It would change everything.
Yeah, that's right. So the sea becoming blood is corrupted truth, polluting external religious practices. The sea creature's dying is affections and perceptions in the outer mind turning evil. That if you've got that evil love in there, you actually start to, even the day-to-day stuff begins to be affected negatively by that. The ships being destroyed are concepts from the word that were falsified, which could no longer lead to a heavenly way of life. You think about a ship being something that allows you to sail on top of the sea. These spiritual truths are supposed to be something that lets us navigate life and stay out of it so we don't drown, so that we get somewhere. But those are getting destroyed by the flaming mountain. It's a problem.
It's a problem, and flaming mountain problem, and the fact that it turns there at the end to Scripture is very interesting, because the next verses are, in a way, all about a reaction to Scripture. In verses 10 and 11, then the third angel sounded, and here's where Wormwood, the star of the show, comes onto the stage.
Hey, show of hands. How many of you forgot we were talking about Wormwood? Put in the comments. No,
that's all right. I understand.
But I'm just saying, we've been through so much. Just remember, this is what we came for. Who is this Wormwood?
This is what we're here for. So who is
What's
this?
it doing? Yeah.
Building up to this. And a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch. Very similar to that burning mountain that just went down in the last verses. And it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. Now, the mountain never got named. Why is the star named? The name of the star is Wormwood, and a third of the waters became wormwood. And I might point out here that wormwood in the Greek of the book of Revelation is apsinthos, which means undrinkable. It's a bitter substance, and if you add it to other stuff in any kind of quantity, it makes it undrinkably bitter. And look at what happens at the end of this verse. And many people died from the water because it was made bitter. So it's got to do with bitterness. Okay, so what's going on there?
Yeah, so who's Wormwood and how does it apply? So that falling star burning like a torch is these conceited personal intelligence arising from hellish desires. So it's this sense of I know what's going on, and the root of that is this: I'm better than everybody.
Yeah, and
Wormwood.
boy, does that conceit ever come into like religious debate, or you know what I mean? Like, oh, it feels like, yeah, you can see some of that sometimes, and
Oh, are you look? You and I are
yeah,
both burning with it right now. I can tell.
absolutely, yeah, oh, yeah, just high on ourselves. That's right.
I've got a little stopwatch that's like, how much time has Jonathan been talking for compared to how much time I've been. So, wormwood is hellish falsity, which makes ideas bitter. And really, what? I think the next couple are going to explain what that means. Bitter
Yeah,
means they cannot be taken in and absorbed. The rivers and springs of water, which wormwood fell on, is the word's truth that was getting falsified and becoming unpalatable. Many people die as many people adopted this kind of mindset and lost all heavenly love, turning instead to evil. So wormwood is this falsity which makes it so we can no longer absorb the ideas. So the actual truth that was in the word, these ideas that were meant to establish connection between heaven and earth, because we had this falsity in the minds coming from this star, the conceited personal intelligence, the conceit that wormwood is, it made it so we didn't, I don't want that love your neighbor stuff. Like I'll pay lip service to it, but what it actually means, love your enemies, no way. I'm not going to do it. So the people dying is the people who adopt this mindset. And it's not you die like your heart stops, but your spiritual heart does, because you lose the love that we're supposed to have and you turn to evil. And that's what spiritual death is.
and don't you feel, Curtis, like you can see this in certain ways that where it gets to the point, isn't there a lot in our world, a very understandable allergy to Scripture, to religion itself? Like, religion has become very widely like disgusting,
Yeah.
because it got associated with, I don't know, child abuse or political domination or wars and all kinds of things.
Right.
Like, hang on a second, and that made it so unpalatable that people don't want to drink it. But if you're not drinking in some sort of truth or some sort of teaching about love, your spiritual heart is going to suffer from that.
It's like Wormwood's legacy.
Yeah, and so we've just got 2 verses to go here. Then the 4th angel sounded. So what's going to happen now?
Right?
Well, something very strange, again involving thirds. A third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, a third of the stars, and a third of them, it helpfully adds, was darkened, so that a third of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. And I just want to hit pause for a second here and just say, you can kind of, I love it when Scripture says, we did a Swedenborg Life Live about this not too long ago, about is there an inner meaning in the Bible? Isn't it kind of crying out in a passage like this? Like, the fact is, if you lost a third of the sun and a third of the moon and a third of the stars, so the third of them were darkened, what would not happen as a result of that is you'd lose like 4 hours of daylight and 4 hours of night or something. It's like, that's not how it works.
That's not how it works.
There would be less light all the time or something, but it's not speaking literally. But what does it mean?
Yeah, what is it trying to tell us using these images that we would understand, but in this strange kind of mystical way? So the sun being struck means you're not knowing what love is. The sun is divine love, and you start to not lose touch to the basic nature of empathy. Right?
Gosh, and if I can just break in for a second and say that, how tragic is it to get to the point where you don't even know what love is anymore? Like getting to the point where you have completely lost touch, or your definition of love is not loving at all. It's judgmental and harsh and self-serving and arrogant or something. You've totally lost touch with what love actually is. That's tragic right there.
Yeah, well said. And the companion to that, the moon being struck, is not knowing what faith is. What the faith is meant to be the intellectual framework through which love operates. But if you start thinking of something else, it's very hard to get back. Stars being struck is falsifying concepts from the word. So picking little Bible verses out and saying, well, this means this and that means that, when it's not really what they mean. Yeah. All three being darkened is an inability to understand love, faith, or the word. The day or night not shine. Yeah.
It was weird in the story, wasn't it, that it had to sort of say that again, like sort of, and all three were darkened. Oh, really? Yeah. But that's because it has to wrap it up. There's an inability to understand love, faith, or the word.
And the day or night not shining is there's no enlightenment left to inform people, and this is the function of the church, how to live. That people don't know. That's right.
And when I think about that imagery of Wormwood being this star, the star is supposed to be something that's guiding you through the dark, helping you find your way. That was the ancient GPS system forever. The stars were supposed to guide you, and when that crashes, you have a real problem. You can't tell how to get out of hellish feelings and thoughts in yourself. You don't know what to do about them. You feel stuck.
Well, and the whole function of having written revelation and having religious organizations or churches is meant to be, because, according to Swedenborg, the state of the untouched human heart does not necessarily lead us to good. That we all, look at the human race as a whole. There's all kinds of destructive urges that well up all the time. Swedenborg says you're basically saturated in them. So you can't just turn to that and say, what do I want? Because what we want, even if you think what you want is all good, you certainly know of people in the world who what they want. You say, no, that people can't want that. So it's meant to be that this revelation allows us to know, to discern what's the way forward in this. But when that's destroyed, then there's no way. It's just you're in the dark without a light.
Yeah, you can't get out. And this ties in very well with the last verse of the chapter, where John, who's having this whole vision, says, "And I looked, and I heard an angel flying in the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, 'Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the remaining blasts of the trumpet of the three angels who are about to sound.'" And here again, this woe, woe, woe just sounds like a curse. Look out, everybody, or something. But again, that's not exactly what it means, is it?
Yeah, no, it is. It's a curse. No, I'm kidding. So an angel flying in the midst of heaven is the Lord instructing and predicting. Because if we get to be angels, we are more and more a conduit for divine love and wisdom. This woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth is actually the Lord's utmost grief over this state of evil and the consequent misery in Christians who have separated faith from charity. So the Lord is not angry. The Lord is heartbroken. That First of all, look what you've done to yourselves. You have burned up your forests, you have burned up your grass, you have polluted the water inside yourself, and now you're making it so you can't have heaven. Like, you can't accept when I try to send you love, it turns into all this problem because you set yourself against. So it's like for the people there, but then the ripple effect that sends out across the human race, there's this grief from God about, hey, we were gonna, and you think with all of churches and all the religious things that have a good initial trajectory, God is trying to turn that into this great connection. This is a project the Lord really wanted to have work, right?
Heaven on earth was the goal. That's right. And instead, you're ending up in this miserable situation where people can't find their way out of the dark at all. And Swedenborg says that word woe means this lamentation, and it happens 3 times over because it's really intense grief on the Lord's part. So it's the opposite of throwing thunderbolts and trying to smite the human race or something. I just happen to love that word, smiting. But the woe, 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 this is just, he's grief-stricken about what's happened to this machine, as you say, that's supposed to be just a ray of light, like hey, here's a way to deal with that problem, It's supposed to be a solution, not a part of the problem itself. And so Swedenborg breaks down in Secrets of Heaven 83:21 what the means of salvation. Like, so much of this is about self-centeredness latching onto a theory about salvation and how it works and how it relates to love, and saying love is not really necessary. You don't need that. You don't need to be nice to people, or you don't need, you don't need any of that. That's not all that important. What's important is, are you thinking the right things in the right order, and do you think about them the way I think about them? Yeah. And so here's what he says about that. And it's all what he's framing here in this statement is about our receptivity. Are we open to these gifts that the Lord is trying to give us, or are we closed off from them? So he says the ability to accept truth from goodness and goodness from truth, which are these two flavors of wonderful things that you need.
Yeah.
That ability to accept those, that receptivity to them, is attributed to people who have genuine faith, because no spirit has that ability except one who lived a life of neighborly love. He's done the research. He was there with his clipboard, and he could see, okay, let's add it up. How many people have that who didn't live a life of neighborly love? Oh, 0. The number is 0. You always have to have that neighborly love to get that true life of faith. He goes on, a life of love gives us the ability. Anyone who believes faith without neighborly love can grant us that quality is greatly mistaken. Faith without love is hard and resistant and rejects all the Lord's influence. It's making me think of all the sort of great arguments and debates and hateful, dismissal of other religions or whatever that goes on. Yeah, faith without love is hard. It's rock hard. But love combined with faith, and I like the fact that the first time he says faith without love, and the faith comes first. But the second time, he doesn't say faith with love. He says love combined with faith. The love comes first, is yielding and soft and accepts his influence. That's why charity, that kindly feeling in your heart towards other people, gives us the ability, but faith without charity does not. And since charity gives us the ability, and what ability? We're talking about that ability to receive these gifts from God in heaven.
Right.
Are you open to it or not? If charity gives us that ability, charity, here it is, drum roll, charity is also what saves us. Wow, everybody says it's just you got to believe, that's it.
Your faith
and
saves,
he's saying
right?
Kind of the opposite. Charity is what saves us. People who are saved, and then he has a qualifying sentence on the end here, that it's not pretending or going through the motions or something. He needs to clarify. People who are saved not by neighborly love they themselves generate. Like, oh, I can pretend. Sure, I can pretend to be nice. But that's not what he's talking about. People who are saved not by neighborly love they themselves generate, but by love the Lord gives them for their neighbor. So they're saved by the ability to receive that love. That's the punchline right there.
Yeah, well, and so if we're talking about, what you're saved by is this truth from goodness and goodness from truth, which is coming out of God, the real stuff. But in order to be able to receive that, in order to not be a frying pan that rejects the water, we've got to have this charity. And I love that you stopped on that love combined with faith, because we're all saying, oh yeah, it's love, it's love, it's love. But love needs to be combined with faith. That it's love on its own is not going to do it. That the way it was meant to be is that there's this love and this faith together, and that's the optimal state of mind. But but when you're missing a piece, the whole thing doesn't operate.
Falls apart.
Right. So in 1757, this was mainly about the state of the Christian religion, but this imagery can teach every kind of person the drastic consequences of separating doctrine from a life of active goodness and compassion. And doctrine, I would say, that's got to extend even beyond just religious doctrine, but whatever your life philosophy is, if you're digging into that without this goodness and compassion, it's going to end up serving love of self and love of the world, the things that make up hell.
Yeah. It won't be a star guiding you out of the dark. The star will stop working.
That's right. Hey, so that's a lot. Let's take a moment here to let it settle. Let's do a little correspondences meditation. So let's take this imagery of destruction that we see in the book of Revelation that we've learned is a picture of what this sort of self-centeredness can do to our ability to let goodness and truth in. And let's turn it on its head, because if we're thinking about all the stuff that got burned up and got destroyed, let's take a moment to realize how great that stuff is when it's not burned up, when it's alive, when it's not destroyed. So we, in this chapter, talking about trees, grass, mountains, water, all kinds of things. When they're in the state they're meant to be in, this is a representation of ideas and loving kindness united like they're supposed to be in the ideal state for the human mind. So if we do allow that to happen, for the truth to be united to the goodness, both of which are really coming out of God, and we unite those in compassion, this brings this totally heavenly life and beauty into our minds and hearts and actions. And this stuff from nature is actually a picture or a correspondence of that stuff working well. So let's take a moment to look at the positive side of it. And you think about all these things you see as the state of things when they're functioning as they should be in each one of us. It's so cool. And you just go outside. You just look at the things that give us peace in nature. They're awesome just in their structure, but it's one of the reasons why we connect with them so much is that they are showing us this example of how things are meant to be when everything's working in harmony. So it's very, very cool. All Beautiful. That said, hopefully that was a little bit of time for us to kind of settle with all the information we've been taking in. But if you look back over the span of this whole episode, Jonathan, what do you feel like, we're talking about the wormwood and all the associated things. What's the takeaway here from this whole experience?
Well, I'm feeling greedy. I'd like to take two. One is one that often comes up in these Swedenborg Life Live episodes, which is just that what you think is God sort of trashing the human race or something turns out to be such an act of love and trying to restore things to a healthy functioning. It's kind of like a kid who doesn't want to go see the doctor, and it's like, no, that it's trying to help us. And in this specific story, the wormwood, I'm really struck by this imagery of the star, this thing that was supposed to guide you out of the dark, got broken. And what do you do then? Basically, when Revelation itself, the interpretation of it got so fouled up that you can't see where to go or what to do anymore, you need kind of a new revelation about that revelation. And it's amazing to me to think about this being encoded in the book of Revelation, that already before all this stuff went down in Christianity, there was already a document that said, by the way, this is how this is going to go, just saying. And then that was revealed later when Swedenborg was shown the spiritual world and what the meaning of it was. So this is too long for a takeaway, but I think that star not working anymore, we really need that so badly, and that's a very bitter thing, and it's a very bad thing for the human race when revelation becomes distasteful and we don't even want to hear it anymore because it's been so polluted with other people's agendas.
Right. Yeah, and like the series of seven within the seventh seal, what's told about these big religious epochs in the history of humanity is a story about what can happen in each one of us. And on the reverse side, we can not do that stuff and do the positive stuff instead. Hey, guess what? We got a lot of cool stuff coming up on our channel that we can't wait to tell you about. But first, a quick video about how you can support making this kind of program happen.
We want the ideas and insights we cover to be available for free to anyone, anytime they need them. As a nonprofit, we depend on donor support to continue to create high-quality programming. Any gift you give joins you to the central network of people in the world who make our work possible. You can deepen the significance of your gift by making it in memory or honor of someone special in your life. This could be done as a one-time gift, recurring monthly, or run as a special fundraiser for your circle of friends and family. Go to otle.causevox.com and follow the prompts to make a gift in whatever way is most meaningful for you. Your support helps the ideas in our content reach and nourish thousands of people every day around the globe. We couldn't do it without you. Give if you can, receive if you need. If we cycle through in this way, in the end, everybody wins.
Okay, coming up on the channel, as if you didn't get enough good food for thought in this show, we have our regular roster of content coming your way. News from Heaven on Thursday, we'll be looking at why love for ourselves has become corrupt. And on Saturday, spirits don't know what they are. It's true, but we can know what they are. Short clips on Wednesday, are we saved by grace or works? And
there
Friday, yeah, it's a little bit all connected. Friday, universally accessible joy, a passion for helping others. Next Monday, we will be off. In the United States, there is a national holiday called Memorial Day, but we will be back the following Monday with our continuation of our Divine Design series, 2 Steps to Awaken to God's Design. Thanks so much, everybody, for being here with us. Jonathan Rose, it was a pleasure getting to go through this with you and get to hear your take on it.
That was really great, Curtis. I just enjoyed this a lot.
Me as well, and thank you again to all of you in the audience for making it so we have a community to discuss this stuff in. Hope that the rest of your day goes good. Hopefully some of this stuff empowers you to go join that love and truth and have a great week. We'll see you soon.
Swedenborgian Life Live is Curtis Childs, host and showrunner, with co-host Jonathan Rose. Live stream tech and graphics by Stuart Farmer and Matthew Childs. Show writing and chat moderation by Karin Childs and Chelsea Odner.